All right, you guys, let's get some more. Let's get some more people in the chat room. But we are live again, second time today. Search for Huru, and I have Phil Poquie with me, my Liberian brother.
Happy to be here.
You know, thank you for coming on. Let's get some more people in the chat room first. My bad, Michael. I said 3:30. I did. It's 4:17. I apologize. It's just we had to delay it a little bit, but I'm glad you're here, Michael. So happy you're here. But no, we're just gonna discuss because, like I was telling Phil offline, here in America, in our history classes, we're not taught much about Black history anyway, or African history. But one dynamic we're not taught at all is, after the Civil War, free Black slaves were given an opportunity to create their own, I guess, settlement called Liberia, which is known as Liberia. We're not taught that at all. So I wanted to get into that. Wanted to get into how, I guess, it was somewhat, I don't want to be rude or disrespectful, a failed state, and what kind of the impact or the legacy those free slaves who decided to settle in Liberia, what kind of impact it has on Liberia to this day. And then, after that, we're going to get into, election stuff, Liberian economy, just because over the last few years, I mean, Liberia's just had a bad, it's just been a lot of negative stereotypes from Ebola to, Charles Johnson, which Charles Taylor, which I have a very funny, it's not funny, but I have a story to tell you in regards to that. In fact, I'll tell you right now. So my dad used to go, I guess, diamond hunting or in the mines in Liberia. And so my dad's claim to fame is that he used to date Charles Taylor's sister. That was his claim to fame, that she used to come to Sacramento. So that's where I'm from, Sacramento. And, that's his claim to fame. I never met her, but that's what he used to tell me. So, but this is before, I guess, the Civil War, or I don't know. This is back, this had to be mid 80s, early 90s, but the Civil War was going on and off here and there. So I want to get into that too, because there's so many major players in the Civil War, because we know Samuel Doe, Charles Taylor, then you had the guy before him. And so you had and then you have Prince Johnson. It's like a lot going on with Liberia. So we want to break it down and somewhat condense it for people to understand. But Phil, thank you for coming on. And if you could somewhat, like I said, we started off, into the Civil War.
Yeah.
You got a lot of free Black slaves.
Yeah.
And as you said, these free Black slaves, for the most part, worked in the agricultural sector because they were picking cotton for the most part on the plantation in the South.
Absolutely.
So somebody said, look, a couple of things. These free Black slaves can pose a threat to us white people because they're free now, or we don't have any work for them. We don't want to give them any work because we don't want to empower them. So let's send them back to Africa. Can you kind of go into detail as far as what happened? Who were the major players like Abraham Lincoln and and stuff like that?
I mean, as far as there were supporters on both sides, whether it was the slave owners in the South or it was the abolitionists in the North, whether it was somewhat liberal guys like Abraham Lincoln or Thomas Jefferson, who was supporter of this. They created a society they called the American Colonization Society, and you have guys like Monroe, who, I mean, as far as his history, he put a lot of money into it because both people wanted to see. There's a lot of free Blacks who just got freedom, and the economy was starting to industrialize, and you don't really need them. But then again, if you have a lot of them around, we have to do something with them. It's kind of the idea. So, I mean, they started a small experiment, took the first ship out. It's called the Mayflower. Took the first ship out, 88 Blacks, about 3 white agents, they call them, just to sort of look over.
Right.
Because they thought, they can't govern themselves. There was still that type of racism. Blacks are inferior. They can't really handle their own governing. So they got there. They actually they try to bribe the chiefs. I forgot the chief name, but when they landed there, they weren't welcome there pleasantly. They struggled to find land at first, but then they were able to snooze this chief over, and they found some land. They found some land. It was a settlement, and it was a settlement for like about 15 years. It didn't start off. They got there about 1820. 15, 20 years. Liberia didn't get its independence until 1847, when there were 5 colonies that were together. But it was a rough start, but after they settled there, over time, progressively more African Americans started, or Americo-Liberians, as they later call them, settled over. They saw that they got the land, the space, and people started coming over. And yeah, it just kind of grew from there.
Okay, now the type of free slaves that came over.
Yeah.
As Victor said in the chat, Liberia, a sad case of Negro-European Americans mostly that went there and subjugated the indigenous. So were these? I'm trying to think of I'm trying to give an example of current day Black Americans.
Yeah, they're like pretty much bourgeoisie's blacks. Like there's a lot of them were mixed race. They really thought down on the indigenous people. They brought the same values and culture from America, like the way the way they were treated, honestly, is the way they thought of themselves when they came, and they treated the indigenous people in that manner. They had their own little private class, and they sort of governed everything, especially the start. So they were very isolationist between themselves and the indigenous people, and they thought themselves way better, way highly intelligent than the indigenous people that were there.
I'm trying to think of an example we could give of we'll say like a Ray Lewis or Charles Barkley. I don't know. Like, give me an example of a current day Black people with the mindset here in America that would have been similar to.
That's a good one. I mean, first, a person I would think about now is like a O.J. Simpson in his prime. How he was like, I'm not Black, I'm OJ.
Right. Okay.
And the same thing as like indigenous people, or like the people who settled there. They came with this mentality that we're not really Africans, we're African Americans, or we're Americo-Liberians, and they didn't really embrace like Africa when they came. They separated themselves.
Okay. So they didn't embrace Africa in the same manner that a lot of Black Americans who go to Ghana embrace Africa.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're saying.
As far as like the religion as well, because when they got there, indigenous people were still had their cultural religion. They still believe in their deities, and they thought they wanted to Christianize people, and they wanted them to get Western education, and they pretty much instill the value that they saw here in America during that time period.
Okay. Yeah. So they even brought the Christianity and everything over to
everything.
Okay. Yeah. So how did they go about, I guess, enforcing Christianity amongst the natives? Like, how was it? Was it the same way Europeans did, or?
They had missionaries. It's the same way they built churches. They believe in the same. They believe that all Liberians were created equal through Western education and through Christianity. So they believe that people had to be converted. They didn't do it. They didn't like force it upon them, but there are limitations throughout power in Liberia. If you weren't, say, dressed Western or act Western, they spoke English. All their houses were the same as Southern houses that they saw in the South. And then also white missionaries also came. There's also that came too. And they went about it the same way through the churches. And people slowly converted.
Okay. So do you think that the free black slaves that were chosen to come to Liberia,
Yeah.
do you think they volunteered or were they chosen? Like, did they choose a select few who already were somewhat acclimated to American culture and how things need to be run and serve the best interests of white people here in America before you even think about serving the best interests of the Native Africans of Liberia?
That's a really great question. Actually, I mean, I actually don't know for sure, but a lot of these people who came back, they were of mixed race. So if you could say,
okay, so you're saying, okay, so stop the show.
Yeah.
So you're saying the majority of the free slaves that I guess settled, or we can even say colonialized Liberia, were mulattoes.
Yeah, a good amount of them. Yeah.
Okay, see, that's a whole different dynamic. And the reason why I say that, because in America, we're one of the only few places that has the one drop rule. Versus everywhere else, you're mulatto or you're colored or you're mixed. Like, you're not black. But here in America, you have this one drop rule. So, I mean, we could kind of say, or not even kind of say, that it wasn't. Okay, if we're thinking outside of the American paradigm, it wasn't black people that settled Liberia. It was whites and mulattoes. I mean, can we say that, or?
I mean, the detail as far as like all of them being mixed race is not exact. Like, no, I mean, you could have had some pure, thoroughbred, pure 99% or 100% Negroes who are settling there. But the ones who did come to power and the ones who did start governing after sort of the whites sort of paved it out, they were sort of bourgeoisies. They kept those values. So yeah, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you got to think about it. For the most part, after slavery or even during slavery, the mulatto was the one that was educated. The black slaves, we didn't have access to education. So what you're saying makes sense, because we wouldn't be in a position to go over and establish anything because we weren't educated. It was the mulatto who for the most part, got the preferred treatment.
Yeah. So the field slave versus the house slave thing, they just took a bunch of house slaves. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, so that makes sense. So we get over there.
Yeah.
Okay, when does the beef between, can we go in more detail about the beef between the, I guess, American Liberians and the other indigenous tribes?
Yeah, so, I mean, the American Liberians ran Liberia from 1850 to 1980 till, I guess, Samuel K. Dole. I mean, it started off with two parties. It's the Liberia. They called the Liberian Party. It's pretty much the Republican Party of Liberia. That was like the first party, and then there was the True Whig Party. And throughout the early 50s, the Republican Party was kind of, I mean, electing guys. There's about three, four presidents, and the True Whig then started winning. And the True Whig Party, I mean, they're pretty much both of them were American Liberians. Like both parties were. They found ways to limit voting rights for indigenous people.
Wow.
Whether it's same means as American, whether it was education wise, passing certain stuff for voting, the religion aspect, but they put in systematic, rules and laws to limit indigenous people from voting. They made less than 5% of the population. They still make less than 5% of American Liberians. Yeah.
So are they okay? So when I go to Africa, this is what I noticed. I go to a place like Tanzania.
Yeah.
I noticed that the Indians are completely segregated from the other Africans for the most part. So you're saying that through this whole period of time, for the most part, the American Liberians completely segregated themselves from.
Yes. not they didn't build a wall. Like, it wasn't like apartheid. Like,
Right.
they pretty much did. Like, I mean, a lot of, and they try to restrict. So they had access to key resources. They had access to the water, to the ocean. Monrovia is kind of closer to the ocean. It's actually on the coast almost, and a lot of
not to cut you off. Liberia is like either Liberia or Sierra Leone is like the #2 exporter of timber in the world or something. Like
yeah, Liberia as far as rubber.
Rubber too, right?
Rubber has been Liberia's sort of, it's like a coltan for Congo,
right?
So they've been, at one point they were the largest exporter of rubber in the world. They're the #3 exporter of iron ore during that same time period. So I mean, they've had their ups and their downs far economically, but as far as some resources on that coast, they got some serious, like, they're blessed as far as like what they could be producing to the world. But yeah, man. Forgot my tangent that I was on.
As far as the resources, but hey, people in the chat room were saying, look up the picture of Robert Jenkins, the first president of Liberia. He looks white. Whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it started off white. I think until about the third or fourth one. James Monroe is actually, I think, the first president. They made him the first president.
Monroe?
Yeah, James Monroe.
But he's the president of America too, I think, right?
Pretty sure, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's
interesting.
That's crazy. So, I mean, but how were 5%? Because I mean, this is the thing. Like, okay, you look at South Africa. You know, the 5%, the whites could, pretty much control everything. But they had military. I mean, they had pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Like, how were 5% of American Liberians able to control everything? I mean, did they have, like, what kind of military support did they have to enforce everything? Like, I just don't see it.
But completely the backing of the U.S. They're pretty much a protector state for the U.S. It was strategic for the U.S. to keep them in power because they kind of served their interests, whether it was through throughout their history. The U.S. has used Liberia as a place for their military bases, as a place for getting rubber. Firestone, the company who actually started that largest plantation, rubber plantation, is an American company.
Right.
America, whether through business interests, military interests throughout the Cold War, they've had a lot of I guess concern and I mean, Liberia was strategic to them pretty much. So their military protected them. Any uprising that came out, and there was a good amount of them, they squashed it. Whenever Liberians needed guns, that's what they came to the U.S. and it's kind of how it's been. It's been like the big brother, little brother.
Okay. What? All right. So, from my understanding, I think like in the 40s to like the 60s, like Liberia was doing pretty good, right? Or
yeah, they were solid. Like after World War II pretty much helped because a lot of the war, like people needed rubber. So Firestone started 1926. By the 1940s, when the heart of the World War II was going on, Liberia was exporting rubber to, the Allied military.
Right.
So it just kind of carried out throughout the 50s. Then they got it in the mix with iron ore, and they were just sort of doing okay for themselves. The U.S. still had a lot of interest in them throughout the 60s because they wanted the U.S. gave a lot of donations, actually. Sorry about that.
So good.
The U.S. gave a lot of investments because the U.S. wanted them to be sort of pretty much to stop the I'm losing my train of thought here. Pretty much to stop any communist influence in Africa. So, as far as strategic, I guess, political purposes, Liberia was always that state for America and Africa, just in case Russia does come and try to, or the Soviet Union does come and try to influence countries in Africa. But yeah, man.
Okay. All right. So I guess in the 70s. Okay, who was the leader before Samuel Doe?
So this guy Robert Tolbert, he was
Robert Tolbert. Okay.
he was an American-Liberian descendancy. He was the last one.
Okay.
Throughout the 70s and that period, it was the height of the Cold War, and Liberia was getting a lot of investment and a lot of aid from the U.S. And the government pretty much embezzled everything. The corruption was really rampant. They kept it in their sphere. And he pretty much squandered the money to the point that in order to pay some of these investments and some of these loans that he was getting, both from Britain, the U.S., Germany, France, mainly the U.S., he he raised the rice price. 1979, he raised the price of rice in Liberia, which was kind of like the last straw. It was already kind of uprising from the indigenous people, but when he raised the price of rice in 1979, it was kind of a small revolt to start. They tried to overthrow him. 70 people died in the city of Monrovia, and then Samuel K. Dole, who was actually trained by the U.S. Special Forces, staged a second coup on him after the first one failed, and he was successful.
Right. So they killed Robert then, correct?
Yeah, they killed him. Yeah.
Okay. Now Samuel Doe though was also an American Liberian, correct?
No, he was an indigenous Liberian.
Really? Okay.
He was the tribe that he's from is call him he's a Crew or Kron. I forgot. Was one of them, but he was an indigenous Liberian. And thing about him is, as far as his cause, it was a very proud moment for the people, the indigenous people of Liberia, to finally get that point in power. But once he was given the power and I guess the presidency, he didn't really know what he was doing, honestly. He actually lacked the education to run a country. So I mean, it showed that 9 years got really corrupt really fast.
Right.
They embezzled money. They kept money in their sphere. He didn't know any economic strategies as far as like export-led growth. He didn't understand how to deal with like relationships, political relationships, geopolitics. He didn't know, and he didn't know what to do. Honestly, he thought they had gotten it, but he didn't know what to do. He squandered all the money between him and his tribesmen. He appointed people from his tribe. And by the time you know it, 9 years, the country is bankrupt again. And,
wow.
Yeah, and then revolt started again. So actually, revolt started again, and he started killing people in his own government that he thought were plotting against him. There was an incident where somebody staged a coup on him. I forgot the guy's name.
It wasn't Prince Johnson, was it?
No, it wasn't Prince Johnson yet. It wasn't Prince Johnson yet, but he killed like 600 people. So in order to stay in power, he was getting rid of people, and he felt threatened. He felt people were after him because the status of the country was falling apart. But yeah.
Because they show these old videos, man, of these coups. Like they were showing a video of the Samuel Doe, what's the word? Coup. And like they were tying up his, I guess some of his you know, his government officials on poles, and they just started shooting them. I was executing them. I'm like, God damn. And then, you know, with Samuel Doe, Prince Johnson had him butt naked in somebody's office. It was just mutilating them. I'm like, God, Lee, it's just kill him and get it over with. But they were torturing him. So you have Prince Johnson. Now, from my understanding, Prince Johnson, either him or Gaddafi, I'm sorry, either him or Charles Taylor. In fact, let me ask you, did Prince Johnson and Charles Taylor work together, or were they?
Yeah. They started off together. Funny thing is, Charles Taylor actually worked in Doe's administration. Charles Taylor studied finance or economics at Bentley University. He actually went back to Liberia.
But I thought Charles Taylor went to school in America, didn't he?
Yeah. I'm sorry. He went to school here in America. Went to Bentley University in Massachusetts. Went and was in his administration for about 2 years. He actually got caught embezzling money from the government of Liberia, fled to America, was arrested here, escaped out of jail. And then when the uprising, when the crowd started stirring up in Liberia about the 80, 88, 89, he had landed back in Liberia 89, and he first went to Libya, and then he went to into the Ivory Coast, got some troops there, and about December 1989. He came in from the north and just through Nimba County, and it's pretty much when the first Civil War started, and he was moving his way to Monrovia from the north, through Nimba County, and this is when Prince Johnson was with him, working with him.
I was gonna say, if you want to, you could turn your video back on if you want to. Or you could,
I didn't notice. Wait, how do I do this?
Go to your thumbnail that's next to mine.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
I think you do it that way, or either that, or it's at the top row, like in the middle, where it has the different. Where it has the different options on top, like turn camera off, turn camera on, or let me see here, or like there's the hide from broadcast button on your thumbnail. But I mean, while you figure it out, yeah. So Charles Taylor, he invades from the north.
Yeah, comes through Nimba County. This is Prince Johnson is with him. Part of this is Coalition for National Liberia. I forgot what they're. I'm trying to get this thing back. I just continue, but Prince Johnson eventually broke off from his regime. Sort of started his regime. He just put the independent in front of it. I forgot. And Charles Taylor wasn't as successful. Prince Johnson was successful because Dole had went to ECOWAS. So ECOWAS, the collective African states in West Africa, they came together to form a resistance against the fighting and wanted to help about 4,000 troops. And they started moving through Liberia around this time too. And there's a base in Monrovia, Liberia, and Prince Johnson had gone there to, not Prince Johnson, but Samuel K. Doe had gone there to pretty much asked for the fighting to stop, and he was ambushed there and captured by Prince Johnson, and that's actually where that video that video is bad, man. It's actually
it's real bad, guys. I might post the link to the video. In fact, I will post a link to the video in the chat, but it's gruesome. It's pretty graphic, man. Like, I mean, so you're saying though he went to.
So
Was this in
ECOWAS,
Monrovia, or where was this? Where this took place?
Monrovia is the capital city of Liberia.
Uh-huh.
ECOWAS, where the collective African states, they had a base there in Monrovia because the fighting was then coming. Prince Johnson and Taylor's regime was pushing their way towards the capital. So ECOWAS, they stationed there. And Prince John and Doe had his own army. He had his own private army, obviously.
Right. So what happened? What happened to Doe's army? How were they able to capture Doe? Like
They were just getting overpowered. A lot of people didn't want to fight for Doe. He has very small backing at this point. And he first tried to resist it through military force, but he was just getting overpowered. He knew that eventually they will take the city. They were pushing in on him. And that point, Charles has split up and Prince Johnson has split up. So he had two rebel groups pushing in on him to Monrovia. So he just said screw it and went to ECOWAS, where their base was in Monrovia. And Prince Johnson had finally breached Monrovia and was able to ambush him there and got to him. It's as far as that video. Like,
yeah. Now, let me ask you this: was Prince Johnson and Charles Taylor, were they given arms by Gaddafi? I heard that somewhere. Is that true?
So Charles Taylor did study guerrilla warfare with Gaddafi, as far as going against a bigger regime and just the strategies of guerrilla warfare. He was a student of Gaddafi. Charles Taylor was. I'm not sure if he gave him weapons. He could have. The timing of how long he was in Libya no one really knows. It could have been. It's in the span of 2 years. I know that, but so he could have given him arms. But he did. He was a student of Gaddafi, without a doubt. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna post this Samuel Doe link in the chat room, you guys. This is pretty graphic, but hey, it's
I'm struggling on this video.
yeah, I'm gonna post this in the chat right now. So there you guys go. If you guys want to watch it at your own discretion. But yeah, it's pretty serious. And I will post the one of Robert Tolbert and his government.
Yeah, when
being in fact, I'll go ahead and post that one too. Them being executed. I mean, who's behind these cameras? Are these just Europeans filming this shit? Like, who comes to film this shit? Like, I mean,
shit,
right? Just this is what happened to you when somebody has a camera in your face. Like, who does this?
A former president, like a president, like.
Yeah. But I mean, they did the same thing with Gaddafi, but it was all camera phones. But I mean, who's filming this stuff? Like, it's just this. It's crazy. Let me get the one for Robert Dover too. Here we go. Let's see here. So Doe was gone. What happens after that? Because there's a civil war that breaks out, a bloody civil war. So what was really going on with the civil war?
So I mean, they had an interim the 37 parties elected an interim president from his name is Sawyer. He was an academic. I forgot his first name. He was an academic. He studied at Liberia. He was an American Liberian too, but he was an interim president for from 1990. I want to say from 1992 to 1994. And he served there. Charles Taylor had disappeared.
Where did Charles Taylor go? Now, somebody said, and I read this before, that he was in prison in Massachusetts here in America and it broke out.
He was. That's before he went to Libya. Yeah. But honestly, there's been some people say he was actually broken out by the CIA, but that's another tangent. I don't know how he would have broken out of jail if he did it himself.
Uh-huh.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like, how the hell did this guy, how would you break out of prison like that and then get a flight out of the country,
Right.
and end up in Libya?
Right.
So it's all kind of sketchy stuff. But yeah, it was. I'm actually kind of dazed on this phase, but it was a ceasefire for about 3 years.
Okay.
It was an interim president, and ECOWAS sort of governed. ECOWAS was just there, sort of monitoring the stability of the country, and this guy was appointed, and Prince Johnson. I forgot where these guys went, man. I actually need to touch up on this, but the fighting started again in 1997. It's actually when I was born. Yeah, it first started in 1997, and this time it was between Prince Johnson, Charles Taylor, where it came back to the city. And you had the ECOWAS troop trying to keep stability because now Prince Johnson and Charles Taylor are now both fighting for power. Even though they were fighting with each other to take over Dome. But they kind of dissembled, sort of regrouped. Prince Johnson was there for a little bit. And then they both sort of got more guys behind them, and they came back. And now you got these guys fighting for power from, you have 1997, 8. Gosh, man. 1997, 8. The war stopped. The war ended in 2003.
Okay.
So about 6 years, about 6 years. Charles Taylor did win. He was elected. He did win. Pretty sure he was elected. But yeah.
Okay. What now let me ask, did Nigeria play a role in the Civil War at all?
Yeah, all these Western countries, they did have troops here and there. They did have troops in that ECOWAS coalition. But what do you mean as far as like
I thought like Prince Johnson or Charles Taylor were backed by Nigeria as well, or something. Either that or Sierra Leone. I'm getting it confused as far as they play a role.
People have said Charles Taylor he was staying in he was frequent in Nigeria. That's all I actually heard about. I just heard that he was frequent in Nigeria.
Right.
He'd like travel there. I think he had a house there. I think he had a place there too. He used to go clubbing there and partying there. But as far as that, I'm not too sure.
No, sounds about right. What so Charles Taylor wins. Where's Prince Johnson at? Is he allowed to? Because I mean, he's still in Liberia, from what I understand. In fact, did Prince Johnson run for president?
Yeah.
So
I think. I mean, as far as him, I think he was overwhelmed by his forces. Couldn't really see him winning. I think he fled actually. He fled the country. I know he wasn't still in the country during Charles Taylor's, I guess, regime. He definitely fled the country, and he came back after everything was said and done. But after the war, there was an election, and these people after the war, the Liberian people still voted for Charles Taylor. Like when he won, it wasn't like he had just went into office. There was an election, and these people still voted him into power.
but you make it seem as you're shocked that people voted for Charles Taylor. Was he considered the bad guy and Prince Johnson the good guy? Like what I mean, who's I guess who was Charles Taylor's incumbent? Like who ran against him?
I mean, the reason with him, he was just corrupt as well. He didn't take care of the country the way it should be. This is my personal opinion. Like again, he kept the money for himself in a small circle. He embezzled diamond money. All the diamonds he sold to these private European diamond companies, American diamond companies. Kept the money for himself. Pretty much was like a warlord in Liberia. Had child soldiers. They'll protect his presidential palace. You have kids with guns protecting his presidential palace. Pretty much a huge warlord in Liberia. Kept the money to himself. That was my whole thing with him. Yeah.
Have you seen the movie with Idris Elba called Beast of No Nation?
Yes, I have actually.
I think that was based on the Liberian Civil War.
Damn, I need to look in there.
I think that was based on the Liberian Civil War, if you ask me. I don't know, because was it General Butt Naked from Liberia, or was he Sierra Leone?
No, I think he was from Liberia.
General Butt Naked.
He was from Liberia.
All right, so Charles Taylor's in power. What happened that made Charles Taylor enemy number one? As far as he had to not too long ago, he had to go face the ICC.
Yeah.
Is he currently in jail right now as we speak, or is he free?
Yeah, he is. People are saying this guy still has influence in Liberia. I think his ex-wife, I think is the VP for George Weah. Touch up on that.
Okay.
But he is in jail right now.
Okay.
He was prosecuted for war crimes after the war ended by the UN, and he's currently in jail right now.
Is he pretty much for life, or is he?
I mean, I think something's interesting is gonna happen. But I'm pretty sure it was for life, but there's been talks about him still having influence. Like he was on the phone with candidate George Weah, who's in now the primaries, I guess, for the election, and his ex-wife is running with him. Charles Taylor ex-wife is running with. I think she's in the Opon's Weah administration, but I guess the sentencing was for life. I'm pretty sure. I know he was doing a long time. Like he wasn't supposed to be out around the corner.
But what I understand, number one, I mean, how can a guy break from prison, escape from prison, catch a plane to Libya, come to Liberia, and how long was he in office? Like maybe 8 years? How long was he in office? Do you know Charles Taylor?
He was in office for about. He has a re-election. He was in office for about 6 years, 4 to 6 years.
4 to 6 years.
Oh yeah.
And then all of a sudden they want to try and take him in front of the ICC. I don't believe in the ICC. I don't think the ICC should be involved in African affairs anyway. And for some odd reason, Africans are the only people that really adhere to the ICC. But you do have some countries that are saying they're not going to listen to the ICC or respect the ICC. Yeah. So Charles Taylor is gone. Now, was Charles Taylor considered an American Liberian, or what's his?
Yeah, it's So his mom, I think his mom was an indigenous. People say she was from oh God, I forgot her tribe. His mom was indigenous, and his dad was either Americo-Liberian or Trinidadian or Afro-Trinidadian.
Okay.
He is a mix. But yeah.
But for the most part, did Charles Taylor grow up in America?
He went to school here. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's crazy. So Charles Taylor is gone. Then I guess you had another president. Then you had the lady president. I can't think of her name. She's the current president now.
Johnson Sirleaf. Yeah.
Is she American Liberian, or what's her background?
I'm actually not sure. I know she's American educated.
So it seems like all these Liberian presidents are
She's
all
mixed. She's mixed, actually.
mixed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it seems like all of them are American educated though. Let me ask you this: the president, people running for president now, are they American Liberians? Are they mixed, or what's their background? You know?
I mean, no. George Weah's, I don't know his background, but he's been in Liberia forever. He's a soccer player, actually. And Joseph Poquie is an indigenous. I don't know what tribe he's from, but he's been politicking in Liberia for a long time, and he's from the interior of Liberia, and he was served as the VP for Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. I don't know why people are voting for him again, but that's my personal opinion.
Okay.
But they're both are indigenous.
Yeah, they're both are indigenous. I just looked at that. Okay. So currently today, how are American Liberians viewed in Liberia this present day? Like, let me ask you: Are you American Liberian, or what are you?
I'm fully indigenous. My family is Mono. We come from Nimba County, which is, look at the map. It's like sort of northern. It shares the border with Guinea.
Okay.
In Liberia, and the Mono people sort of migrated, and there's a history on us, but migrated through Guinea. Some said we originated from East Africa, from Sudan, and what was Mali. So we migrated through there and started settling in Guinea and that northern, and that Nimba County area. The 1400s, 1600s, and been there ever since.
It's funny you say county because like Liberia was like really America because we say county over here.
Yeah, it's fascinating actually.
Yeah, he said county. So how do like indigenous Liberians view American Liberians today? Like, what's how are they treated? Like,
I'm not there, so I'm not fully in the mix as far as like what's on the ground and what's going on. But from what I can study and people that I can talk to in my family, it's not the best relationship.
Okay.
Not the best relationship, especially. Especially the country's been sort of stagnant for this. I mean, they were hit with Ebola and stuff, but it's not the best relationship because of the state of the country.
Okay.
If the state of the country was getting better, then that relationship would change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. As far as Black Americans, because I mean, Bob Johnson had a resort there, I think, in Liberia.
Did he?
Bob Johnson, the owner of BET, the former owner of BET.
Mm-hmm.
I think he had a resort in Liberia.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he still has it or not, but how are, I guess, Black Americans viewed in Liberia, if you know?
I mean, Black Americans are loved in Liberia. I think like Black Americans who do visit to Liberia, they're loved in Liberia.
Okay.
I would say the thing is the other way around. Liberians who come here. I mean, I'm just giving a personal account. Like when I came here and I was in middle school, elementary school, it was so confusing to me because I was getting picked on more by African American kids.
Yeah, I mean, ignorant as hell. Yeah.
Yeah. But vice versa, when African Americans go there, it's like they're loved, honestly.
Yeah, I think part of that is, I'll be honest. Number one, African Americans in school, we pick on each other. I mean, we clown each other, talk about each other's moms, dads. That's just what we do. So If in any way you're different, more than likely you're going to be the butt of a joke. I mean, shit. I mean, that's just how it works. But I mean, like you said, as far as Black Americans going over to Africa in general, I haven't had any issues. I get nothing but love.
Yeah.
So I just want to know if when Black Americans come over, if our Liberians like, hey, you're part of that American Liberian crew, so we don't mess with you guys because they came in over and fucked shit up.
Yeah, it's not that deep, as long as they're not like obviously being I don't know, like obviously being discriminative to indigenous people and just sort of putting their nose in the air and not really like being like, I don't know. But with them, yeah, it's not really that deep. They actually embrace foreigners. Yeah, it's crazy.
Now let's talk about the economy. So do you think Liberia controls its own economic destiny, or does foreign Western interests pretty much control the economy of Liberia?
Definitely Western, definitely outside investments. I think Liberia, they've taken on too many loans throughout their economic history with high interest rates. They haven't, and they've been selling their raw materials unmanufactured and not actually gaining from it. They've opened up their ports to France, Germany, Britain, and the U.S. It's been a tax haven. Like they really like. I think if Liberia can figure it out economically, like it could be a real game changer. It could be a real game changer in that country.
I think that's every African country. If they could figure it out, it'll be a game changer.
It really is, because as far as the resources that are there, like if they were processing, like instead of letting Firestone, a private Western company, come in, which I forgot the deal that they sold them. They bought hundreds of acres for almost $1 an acre, maybe less. I'm actually probably giving them more in order of value. And now that Western company is now employing them, paying them very little, and then using their resources, manufacturing it in that country, and then selling it out to the rest of the world, which Liberians should be doing because they have all the resources to do that.
Now, but do they have the, I guess, equipment or resources to manufacture or produce it?
Liberia they have the engineers, they have the will and the know-how to get these things up and going. They don't give contracts to the Liberians that are there. Like, for example, a lot of Chinese people are moving into Liberia, and the government's over here giving contracts to Chinese companies before they're giving contracts to Liberian companies. And they're taking these investments to build infrastructure. Like the Chinese are building, they're building roads in Liberia. They're building a bridge in Liberia. I think Liberia and the rest of these African countries have to stop. They have to do it themselves, almost.
Right.
And private investments can help from abroad. Like open up the private sector a little bit. That's good. That will help, but I think they should really focus on the deals that they cut out with these private investors. Like they got to read the fine line of what they're signing up for, because a lot of times private investment is good, but a lot of time I just feel like some of these politicians that are so corrupt, honestly, they get a little piece of the pie and they feel satisfied, but they don't understand that by giving that contract up, they're actually hurting the country in the long term.
What you just explained and what I just asked is pretty much consistent across all of Africa. Why is that? As far as China building up everything, us taking bad contracts, leaders, embezzling the money and filling their own pockets. Why is that the consistent narrative across all of Africa? Why do you think that?
It's a great question, man. I feel like, I mean, I want to say lack of education.
See, I disagree. Africans are some of the most intelligent people I've ever met. Like, for real. Like, they are super smart.
Super smart.
Yeah, all of them.
I mean, the corrupt. I don't. It's hard to put. It's hard to really sum it up, man. Like, it's frustrating. It's very very frustrating.
Yeah, it's just it's I don't know. It's just always it's just weird, because like I said, Africans are some of the smartest people I ever met, but they just continue to allow themselves to be screwed over. So as far as where Liberia is today,
Yeah.
it seems like they're going in somewhat. I mean, how do you feel about the presidential nominees that we have right now? Do you think they could take Liberia in a positive direction? Like, what are your thoughts? And do you think the previous president, Miss Johnson, do you think she was successful at all?
I mean, I don't really think she was successful. She was in office for 12 years.
12 years.
Yeah, because it's for a term in 6 years, and she was in office for 2 terms. So she's been there for a while, and obviously the Ebola happened, and it's been setbacks in the country, but I mean, she's kept the money in her circle too, as far as her family. And I think that the 2 presidents that are here, the vice president who's a candidate, he was there for 12 years, and he saw these things happen, and he didn't speak out on it when it was happening. And I don't think he would be able to do anything different. I really don't. I don't think, and he's pretty old too. I don't think he talks about building infrastructure and roads, and that's been his calling card throughout his campaign. And then the other guy, George Weah, me personally, George Weah is not educated enough to be handling Liberia's economy. Like, this guy is not. I think there was a candidate, Cummings, who was executive for Coca-Cola in Africa.
Okay.
About 2 decades. And he has managed hundreds of millions of dollars in budgets. And he was a candidate, but he worked more in America, and he wasn't well known in Liberia. And I felt like that was the reason why he wasn't elected into the primary. But I feel like if George Weah, who is a very popular guy, world-renowned soccer player from Liberia, I feel like if him and Cummings were to embrace each other, if Cummings were to be in his administration and handle the finances, I think they'll be fine, actually, though. But that's a special case scenario.
Do you think Africans lack self-pride and dignity? Is that part of the reason why?
I mean, I feel like it's changing, but
Okay.
yeah, to a degree, I do feel like it's changing, especially the Africans that are here now. I can't speak for all the Africans that are in Liberia because I grew up here, but not for once have I tried to conform or not say I'm not African being here, and the Africans that I know.
Okay.
So I can speak for them here. Good question.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I probably already asked this question. So could we, as far as the way where Liberia is today, how much blame could we place that on the free Black African slaves? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I could say about 70%.
About 70%. Okay. And then, so when the discussion is brought up as far as bringing in African Americans to help rebuild Africa, and people, the rejection they give is, hey, our objection they give is, hey, look at what happened in Liberia. Do you think it's fair for them to use that example, or should they let bygones be bygones, the past be the past, and give it a shot?
I think with the circumstances that are going on here in the U.S., the tensions that are going on here as far as race-wise, I feel like Africa has to build itself up first to a certain point.
Okay.
I feel like if the state that, let's say Liberia for an example, and that's the bridge, that's the connection between slaves here and Africa. If you were to make a connection, if African Americans were to be going back to Africa, to Liberia now in Liberia's current state, I think that would be chaos. I think the same thing will happen all over again because Liberia as a whole is not economically where it needs to be. Politically, as far as like their system of governing is not where it needs to be to have this influx of people. And if you still have the same feelings about how the first free slaves came to Liberia and felt they were better than themselves, if African Americans are still doing that, which living conditions, the living condition has to change.
Okay.
If African Americans are coming from here in better living conditions than they're going and seeing, then they will have that mindset of, yeah, like we're better than them, blah, 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 more educated, look at their situation. But if African Americans came from the projects here and went to an Accra, Ghana, or they went to Lagos in Nigeria and saw some of these emerging cities, they would be like, holy shit, like what's been going on here the past couple of years? Like this is not Africa we were told about. And I feel like that situations like that, it will be more embracing because they can just see, oh, well, like Africa is not, our home is not where we thought it was. But yeah, the situation has to change.
Okay.
And Africans have to do it themselves, the majority work of it.
Okay. I was going to say, Phil, man, talk about your brand. Tell everybody what you do, how to get in contact with you. Let's end on a positive note. But I mean, you have the floor. First of all, let's end on a positive note. Okay. Yeah. Liberia, Liberia. Mm-hmm. Where do you see it, we'll say, 10 years from now? Do you see it being a powerhouse in Africa? Like, how can you, if you had a crystal ball? How would you?
A crystal ball, I see Liberia running the race that China just ran. Obviously, China is a whole different monster of its own. But if you look at China's in what it did in 40 years, and you look at, I compare Liberia to Qatar. Qatar got lucky with liquid gas. Liberia has every resource.
Right.
I do feel like with the emerging economies in Africa, in the next 10 years, Liberia can open up a couple sectors as far as manufacturing and what I'm trying to do now. So I'm a 20-year-old sort of college kid, took a gap year. I've been so proud of like my culture. I wear African clothes everywhere. I'll wear them to the parties out when I go out, and African fashion has been a trend. It's been trending, and it's what I've been trying to do as far as getting it out there. And my clothes are made in Liberia. I'm working with tailors there. I've employed about 3 people there, and just trying to create that entrepreneurship spirit in Liberia, which is already is, and just try to get them to a market here on the West Coast. But I think as far as, I mean, it starts with infrastructure, but I think Liberia can, as far as manufacturing, real estate, we're on the beach. It could be a vacation spot right on the water. I think Liberia has endless potentials.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's perfect. How can people get in contact with you?
So I mean, Instagram is, it's kind of where I'm at most of the time. My email, it's Philip Poquie at Gmail.
And then I'll make sure I'll put all your information in the description too. But go ahead and tell people, where they could get in contact with you.
My Instagram, I'm big on that. Facebook, Philip Poquie. My email, my website, Ugwe.com. I've just been selling clothes here and there, very small here and there to college kids, starting to push the trend within the college market in here in America. Try to get kids what you would call a hip to it. So Instagram. I'm not a big on Twitter, Facebook, and email, honestly.
Okay. All right. So I'll make sure I put all your information in the description as well. But Phil, man, I appreciate you coming on, us chopping it up.
Thank you very much.
Everybody in the chat, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I definitely would like to have you back on, Phil. And make sure you guys are following me on my Instagram page. Search for Huru on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, or Facebook. Make sure you go to dynasamir.com. Make sure you go to searchforhuru.com, and also make sure you go to amazon.com and search your name, Dynasamir. Please buy a book. Again, guys, thank you for coming on. I know it's Sunday and football is on, but you guys chose to chop it up with us. So again, guys, thank you for coming on. Dynasamir, the Confidant Don. Till next time, peace.